Hello, welcome back to Drama 1310, Theater Appreciation. Right now we're going to go into chapter 4, which is the playwright. So, playwright. We've heard of a playwright. We know what a playwright is. That's the person that writes the plays, right? Well, there's a little bit more to it than just writing. So what is the playwright's role? How do they fit in with the overall play? Well, we know that they write the script, but then what happens to them? Well, they're one of the most central figures in the play. Of course, we talk about famous playwrights. We talk about William Shakespeare. We talk about, Sophocles and all Moliere, all sorts of famous playwrights. And they are important because they are the one that gives us the basis to start the play. There are other ways to do it too. Sometimes plays come organically. People do improvs and kind of write them as they go with a whole bunch of people contributing. But right now we're going to talk about the single playwright as one person. So they have to generate the text that is performed. So unlike people who write novels or fiction, I guess those are the same thing, aren't they? Write novels and fiction or nonfiction, people who write books. Playwrights are unique in that they are writing something so that someone can perform it, so that you can see it lived out in front of you. So they work with the actual text, the written part that you would read if you were reading the play. But they're also, even though they're one of the most important people in the play, they're also kind of the most peripheral, meaning that once the play is written, if a playwright is there while the play is being rehearsed and, all coming together, he's kind of an outsider, especially if it's somebody who's their play has been done over and over and over again. And they are maybe alive today and go and they see the play done over here and they see the play done over here, but they're not really involved. They might be scribbling in the back, rewriting things for the next people who perform it, but they're not really involved in that final product that you see for that particular play. The playwright's role. So there's got to be a tension between their individual and their communal desires. And basically that means as an individual, I want to express myself and I want to tell you my life experiences in the characters that I write. But they've got to be compelling. They've got to be something that you would want to see. So they have to communicate their intimate selves and also their views of the world and make it so that everybody wants to see it. So it's a little bit confusing sometimes. They must also speak to a wider world in order to expand the audience members' lives. So as well as I want to show you what's going on in my world and I want to communicate to other people in the world, I also want to show these people way over here about these people way over here. I want to kind of expand the audience's life so that you can see things through other people's eyes. So as a playwright, playwrights make plays. So the word is playwright, not playwright. So the word W-R-I-G-H-T, it means a builder or a maker. So you may have heard of a shipwright. Back in the olden days, a shipwright is somebody who built a ship. So a playwright is someone who builds a play. It's not that they write it. So it's spelled differently, and you should know that. Okay. They use the formal literary devices just like any other writer would, but they use them for dramatic effect. So they will be writing something and they know that it needs to look a certain way on stage. So their writing is a little bit different. They can work in isolation or they can work in a company. Sometimes a playwright will work with a group of people and they will have them read things And the next day they will come back and they will have them read something else completely different because they've reworked different parts of the play. I've actually worked with playwrights like that. It's a really interesting kind of organic concept. So they get to see what it's like when people say it and they go, you know, that's not what I was going for. Or they might lock themselves alone in a cabin and write the play. Okay, they work with two tools, and these two tools are physical action and dialogue to communicate their ideas, rather, sometimes not with words. And then they use words. So I'm sure you've all seen some sort of a love scene where, you know, the words don't match what they're saying, like they're wanting to kiss all over each other and they're saying, oh, you need to go away. Oh, you need to leave here. Oh, so their dialogue is saying one thing and their physical action is doing something different. And a playwright has to write that so that it can be interpreted and shared on the stage. So events are always aimed at creating a memorable impression. You're not just going to have your ordinary life up on the stage, because if nothing happened, if there were no conflicts, it would be really boring. So you need to have something that's meaningful and memorable to get you to want to see it and to share about it. And it can be linear, but it doesn't have to be. So what that means is, if I'm telling a story, I can say, well, first this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Or I could start in the middle. And we've all done this. We say, oh, you know what? I was just thinking about my cup of coffee here in New York. Oh, wow. You know, I had this coffee from New York one time, and it could go back and it could tell the whole story of the way my life in New York, okay, or I didn't live in New York, but I visited, okay, you know, my visit to New York. But I could start it by having a cup of coffee and telling you, you know, starting a conversation on stage, and then the whole rest of the play could go back in time. If any of you have seen the movie Forrest Gump, so he does that. He's sitting on a bench, he's got his box of chocolates, and he is telling different strangers as they come and they sit with him different parts of his story, and it goes kind of back in time, and then it comes to where it is, and then it goes further and finishes the show. So it can be linear, but it doesn't have to be. Plays have several different qualities. Several different things make up what a play is. One of these qualities is credibility and intrigue. So it's got to be believable. We have to believe whatever the world of the theater is, whatever the world of the show is. So we could be watching, you know, Willy Wonka, and we could see Oompa Loompas going by, but that's the world that we have agreed to believe in for that moment. So it's credible that there would be an Oompa Loompa walking by if that's where you were. So my son just added, an unrealistic thing would be just if an Oompa Loompa walked across the stage and no one ever addressed the fact that there was an Oompa Loompa there, and then it just went away. So that is not credible. You do need to have things that are credible to go with your story. Intrigue. It needs to be intriguing enough that we want to see more. We can't be bored with the play. We can't go, you know, I really don't care what happens. You have to be able to, you want to know what happens next, and what happens next, and how does it happen next, and what does he say, and what does she say? So you want to be able to keep your audience engaged in that way. The staged world is internally consistent and compelling. So we need to have both of those things. Other qualities of a play: it needs to have speakability, stageability, and flow. So speakability means that the words that are coming out of the actor's mouth need to flow right. They need to sound good when they say them. If they're tongue-tied, or if their words sound too eloquent, like not something that they would speak in dialogue, in talking to people, it's not going to make any sense. That doesn't mean that, you couldn't have words that are elevated. Shakespeare wrote in beautiful poetry, but it was speakable. People could say it and it made sense, even if it rhymed. Stage ability. You need to be able to stage your shows. There's one playwright that they talk about that I think for her master's thesis, they did not produce her play because they couldn't figure out how to stage it, how to put it all on a stage. So it's got to be able to be speakable, to sound right when someone's speaking, and it's got to be stageable. You have to be able to put all the elements on stage that the playwright is talking about. And flow, it has to flow. It can't be static and jumpy and go from here to there, unless, of course, that's the point of the play. But for a regular play that we're going to watch, we want to see the flow. We want to be carried along with it as it goes. The words and the actions need to have the maximum impact when they're actually staged. More qualities of a play: richness. And we don't mean, your cheesecake and how it tastes. The richness is the depth of language that the playwright uses. And we need to be satisfied with it, and that it fortifies the world of the play. We want people who speak, but people who speak on a deeper level. If we're going to spend 2 hours, 3 hours of our time watching a play, we want to feel fulfilled once it's done. This is a quote from a playwright. When a production is done, it's gone forever, and the only thing that remains behind is the Bible, the play. So remember, we talked about that theater is an event. It's not something you can pick up and read. It's not just a book. It's an event. And the only thing that remains afterwards is the written word of the play. So it needs to be strong enough that it can withstand that test of time until such time as another group brings it to life. It also needs to have depth of characterization. So we want characters who are complex. We don't want just one-sided. We don't want a good guy and a bad guy that don't have any kind of struggle, internal struggle between them. I thought of Iron Man. And, when you first find out who he is, you think, oh, he's kind of a jerk. And then you see the kind of childhood he had and the fact that he's brilliant. He shouldn't talk to people the way he does. Of course, that's kind of the charm of his character. It makes his character a little bit deeper. It also makes it so much stronger when he cares for somebody, when he cares for Piper, when he cares for Spider-Man. Okay, and you actually see him caring and his wheels calculating a little bit differently. It's a deeper character. It's a richer character. It's not just cut and dry. And that's the kind of characters that we want to see when we go to a play. We want to see someone who's not completely one way or another, but they are made compassionately like a person would be. Other qualities of a play: it needs to have gravity and it needs to have pertinence. And that basically the theme of the play needs to be strong enough that it's important. It compels us to think somehow or to feel somehow. And pertinence means that it's important even today. So the theme and the relevance of the concern of the audience and of current events. Sometimes we'll see plays that have been restaged that are old plays, and we think, what does that have to do with today? And one of them is, I mentioned it before in another lecture, Tartuffe by Molière. And Tartuffe is about kind of getting suckered or swindled by someone who is in power. At the time, it's a church hierarchy figure. And they believe everything that he says because he's supposed to be a church figure. Turns out he's actually a bad guy. And that doesn't mean all church people are bad guys. It just means that sometimes we get disillusioned by the office rather than the actual person that's there. So that would be pertinent today. That would be pertinent in any situation. You need to, view authority as authority, but you also have to realize that people are people. So it's a strong message, and it's also a pertinent message. Qualities of a play, compression and economy. Now, this is not about money, and it's not about, squeezing things into somewhere else. Although it is a little bit, because compression means taking all these events, this is, in some cases, years worth of story and squishing it into 2.5 or 3 hours. So everything needs to be important. Everything needs to have weight. There are no wasted words in a script. There is no wasted time. Audience doesn't want to sit there and have you waste their time. So it's all kind of compressed. It needs to be able to be concise. And, economy of size. You need to consolidate if you're a playwright. You're going to kind of push stories together and make things happen a lot faster than they may happen in real life. Events, settings, words, everything. When I was in college, my mentor was a playwright, and every single word he chose was of utmost importance. And I'll never forget this. We were doing a children's play, and in the children's play was a red-headed vulture, okay, who was kind of the antagonist of the play. And she turned to someone and said, the line was, "Oh, buzz off." And in rehearsal, she said, "Oh, go away." And the director, who was also the playwright, stopped the rehearsal and said, "That's not the line." And she said, "What?" So that's not the words. That's not the line. She's like, "Oh, it's something like that." And he said, "It's important." And she looked up, and the words were "buzz off." And it was important because she was a buzzard. Okay. And he had chosen those words very carefully, that play on words, so that, and again, this is a children's show, so you're trying to get as much information as you can to the children. So if children see a vulture, they hear the vulture say "buzz off," and then later referred to as a buzzard, that it just puts things together, and children seem to understand a little bit better. But the point is that he was very much a wordsmith, okay? Wanted to get all the words in and have them mean something. And the last quality of a play is celebration. We should be happy that we saw the play, whether it makes us think or makes us cry or makes us feel. Theater blends art and life. There are so many people that are involved in a theatrical production. If it weren't some sort of a celebration, it wouldn't be worth doing. It takes, if you just look at this picture, this is actually a picture from a play called Angels in America. But that costume, just the artwork that went into that costume, and if you see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people in the costume, making it work. That's an artistic expression. And it actually has to do with this particular character who's lying in bed, and he's dying of AIDS, which is a very sad situation. So it takes art and it mixes it with real life, and it blends it together to give us this celebration that is theater. Okay, the playwriting process. If you are going to write a play, There's no set formula. There is nothing that you can do where you go, oh, this is exactly how you do it. But all plays do deal with three major areas. Dialogue, you must have dialogue in your play. And the dialogue is, okay, Charlie, everything all right? Happy? Yeah, Charlie, everything. Willie, what's the matter? You know, Charlie, I heard some noise. I thought something happened. Can't we do something about the walls? You sneeze in here and my house hats blow off. Like, let's go to bed, Dad. Come on. And you go ahead. I'm not tired at the moment. All of that gives you information as an audience member, even if you're not watching the play. Okay. He's saying, let's go to bed, Dad. Come on. So, and he's like, you go ahead. I'm not tired at the moment. It's obviously nighttime. They're supposed to be in bed. Everybody got up because there was some noise. And so there's interesting things that happen in the dialogue. Sometimes it can be composed from remembrances, but it's always based in imagination. So as a playwright, you might decide to write, oh, I remember the time that so-and-so said this and this and this, and that was funny, and you write it down. But then you're going to switch it around and make it fit in your play. So some of it might be real words you've heard, but it's always kind of based in imagination. Then there's conflict. Something's happened. Okay, you know, is everything all right? What's the matter? Something happened to draw these characters out. It says here in the stage directions, Charlie has appeared in the doorway. He is a large man, slow of speech, laconic, immovable. In all he says, despite what he says, there is pity and now trepidation. He has a robe over his pajamas, slippers on his feet, and he enters the kitchen right when all this started. So we feel a conflict for the character if we're reading the play, even before we see the character. The playwright forces conflicts to raise the stakes of the play and lead to a climax. Otherwise, if you're just watching day-to-day stuff and nothing happens, it can be really boring. And plays need structure. They need an overall order of the scenes. We're going to do this scene, then this scene, then this scene, then this scene. Even improv scenes have some sort of an order to them, some sort of a structure to them. So those are in the playwriting process, these are the three major areas that a playwright needs to know, needs to use: dialogue, conflict, and some sort of structure. Okay, now we're going to talk about a few of the current American playwrights that are listed in your text. These are really individual people. I encourage you to read up on them and to read the photojournal at the end of the chapter about Young Jean Lee, who is she's the first female Asian American playwright to have produced a play on Broadway. And it's probably been a long time coming. So it's a big claim to fame. And the play that she produced, it's about straight white men. It's actually called Straight White Men. So really interesting. It's not that she's taken these Asian themes wherever, although many playwrights, if they've read, things from different places, bring all those things together in their plays. Okay. Another one is Annie Baker. And Annie's plays, this is the one that I was talking to you about. They're controversial. They present the minutia of everyday life. So her characters will be like tying their, threading their shoelaces and tying their shoes. And it's a little bit absurd, a little bit on the outside of things. It's meant to be kind of experimental. But she is one of the playwrights that is celebrated. Terrell Alvin McCraney. Okay, he wrote a play called Moonlight, and I think they turned it into a movie. But he also won critical acclaim and for this. And he focuses on specific locales, I believe in the South and in Mississippi, but he also uses like really rich epic language to highlight the struggle of these characters. just because they come from a poor, town or something, doesn't mean that their words aren't poetic. So it's really kind of cool. And then there's Suzanne Laurie Parks. And Suzanne invests in new worlds altogether with her own internal logic. Again, kind of an experimental thing, something very avant-garde, something very surreal, perhaps. And the last one they highlight is Ayad Akhtar. I'm saying his name right. And he was the most produced playwright of the 2014-2015 season in American theater. And the one play that they talk about in the book, he's got all sorts of characters. He's got a lawyer who's a Muslim who really doesn't care that much about, some of the Muslim laws. He's got a white wife, and the white wife cares a little too much about it. And then there's the nephew that actually cares and is upset that all of this is going on. So there's some really interesting themes. And those are the kind of themes that can transcend over time and space and cultures. We've all got things like that going on. So really interesting. And that would conclude this chapter on playwrights. So thank you very much. Stop sharing real quick. And again, if you have any questions on this, let me know.